Welcome back to another episode of Recovering from Everything, a podcast for everyone who has ever had anything happen to them ever. I am your host, Kinga. You know that. I know that. I am scheduled to be on a date right now. Just, I don't think it's going to happen for me, to be honest. Maybe later. I don't know. We might go for a walk. I don't know. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't care. What I do care about is recording this podcast. So it is what it is. Today's episode is a little fiery because we're going to talk about self control, or more specifically, the lies that your drinking, your eating, your late night scrolling, your messy dating patterns are just a matter of you not having enough self control. You know, that voice. I used to buy into that story hard, and sometimes I still do. I can still have like very punishing thoughts about myself. Certainly far worse in the past. I tell myself like, oh, I can run a household and hold down a career and manage other people's moods, um, like a full-time job. Surely I should be able to control how much I drink, or surely I should be able to control what happens when I start to drink. Um, and it throws you into this cycle of failure. So I am like consistently failing when I'm telling myself like I should be able to control this, and it's not productive. And if you are here and you are listening to this, you might already know that. um, you're not actually moving forward or making any productive long-term changes. You're just throwing yourself back into that same cycle of reminding yourself what a failure you are. So what I learned, and something I teach my clients, is that self-control when it comes to the thing is not the problem. You don't need to be stronger, smarter. Um, you shouldn't know better than this. You don't just need to stop. That whole narrative, it's a trap, and the only destination is you feeling like shit, frankly. So, we're going to break it down a little bit today, and we'll talk about why willpower doesn't work the way that you've been told, how your brain is wired to cling to relief, and why sometimes your drinking looks an awful lot like your dating life, my dating life. Full of rules that you keep breaking and shame that follows, and the cycle that you'll swear you'll never repeat again. You guys know so much about my dating life. Um, we're in like a new sort of phase of it. So I'm dating again for the first time um, since getting out of that relationship in November, and um, in the situationship in March. We're dating again, sort of. I have a brand new perspective, and I'm putting a lot of new things into practice, which has like been really cool for me. Um, and I am so super aware when like my cycles are starting to come back. And the cool thing is like I notice it, and I can really pump the brakes on that. So, anyways, we're gonna mention it all. So let's get into it. Okie dokie, let's rip this one wide open. You think you suck at self-control. You don't. End of episode. Just joking. You control everything, right? Your schedule, your kids' school projects, whatever, your partner's moods, your entire household. You can hold it together in a meeting where the stakes are high. You can juggle competing deadlines. You can remember everyone's birthdays. You are not lacking control. That's obvious. What you're lacking in is compassion and understanding for yourself. The story that you've absorbed about self control is the problem, not a lack of self-control. It says, the story says that like if you were stronger, smarter, more disciplined, you wouldn't drink so much. It says you should just be able to stop. It says you should be embarrassed that you can't just stop at one or two. But the reality is that willpower isn't designed to work against your biology. It's just science. When your brain is stressed or depleted or emotionally overloaded, it reaches for a source of relief. And we know our source of relief. So it's actually like very, very efficient that we're reaching for that first drink. It's tried, tested, and true. And, it's been alcohol over the years. And so, um, the idea that you should be able to white knuckle past that is, I recommend you adjust your expectations of yourself a little bit because that is wild, especially if there's nothing in your life that provides that same relief. You're going from stressed, overwhelmed, overloaded to even more stressed, even more overloaded, even more overwhelmed. Like why would that make any sense, right? So, and I know this because this was me. And despite having, not had alcohol in my life for in 3 weeks will be 13 years, um, I find that I have done it over the years with other things, right? Like we know enough about my love life to know that I would place a lot of value and importance on my partners or my romantic partners um, giving me the relief that I like needed. So it's the behavior, it's the story, it's not the alcohol. Because you can remove the alcohol and fill that spot with a person, or fill that spot with food, or fill that spot with shopping or gambling. Um, so like for me, my entire life was built on finding little pockets of control. In high school, it was like my home life was so wild. It was out of control. My grades were out of control because I was skipping school, because being with my friends or not being in class where someone else was controlling me was this sort of like pocket of control and relief that I had. And um, it sounds, at the time it was skipping class was like, and bad grades, like what a terrible way to live. But I look back and I'm like, girl, you did it. Like you found these little hours here and there through your day where like the day was yours, and like I controlled my environment and I controlled what I did and who I was with, and like good for me. And then in adulthood, I was the woman that could like keep a lot of things in the air. Career, my relationships, but when it came to drinking, like I would just lose grip on things night after night. And to be honest, it felt amazing. Like it felt amazing to come home from work, having picked up my bottle of wine and drinking it. That relinquishing of um control on my terms felt so good because in my environment, everyone else controlled what I did. Like, yes, I picked the job that I was working at, but I had a boss, I had a schedule. I was taking the TTC to work every day. I was on that schedule. I was also at the time in a relationship with a guy who was like very lukewarm about me. So that was out of my control. So it was like, when I got to lose control was a relief. It was powerful to me and fun, frankly. Obviously, until the next morning when, and this was every single time I drank, was the next morning I was hit with how much control alcohol actually had on me. Like uh, I had the illusion of control. And the next day it was like, oh, my head hurts. I'm super thirsty. I'm very groggy. Uh, can barely make it out of bed, splash cold water on my face, have a cold shower, whatever. Like, I was certainly not in control. It was an illusion. So it was, and if you have listened to my old podcast, it was really similar to my dating life, like coming out of my marriage, having a number of like committed relationships, all with very similar personality types. To be honest, the personality type of toxic for me, um and still like keeping those relationships going and working really hard to feel like I was in control of that relationship. And one thing would happen and I would be like, oh, I don't actually have any control here. So I'm like busting my ass, staying miserable, right? My last 5-year relationship, I was anxious for 5 years. These little bursts of intermittent reinforcement where I would like occasionally feel comfortable, but it was 5 years of like me trying to, you know, keep the reins, or keep holding onto the reins of that relationship. And then always getting more and more evidence that like, no, 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 the relationship was controlling me. Your relationship with alcohol is controlling me, is controlling you. Um, but you know, no amount of fighting for control could fix a relationship that I was frankly like invisible in. And the reality of that became overwhelming, like the evidence rather of the reality of that became overwhelming. And I was like, what if I just don't anymore? And what if I figure out something else? And this was kind of the same. This is my perspective on my relationship with alcohol too, is I'd had, X amount of years of practice of one type of behavior in my relationship with alcohol. And so my sort of like mantra now is I'm going to give myself just as much time without alcohol in this new life and shaping this new life and sort of putting the puzzle pieces together of this new life. I'm going to give this as much time as I did that, just to be fair. Obviously, this side is much better. And so even leaving my last relationship, it was like, okay, I know what this is like. I'm consistently uncomfortable. And what if I were to leave this behind? And I don't know what new thing I am committing to, recommitting to myself, really mostly. But I didn't really know how or the practice of that, what that would look like what it like, who do I call, right? Like who checks in on like how my day was. I don't know. But committing to whatever this alternate life um ended up being. I already knew what this life looked like and like, okay, let's just see what this life is like. So, um as opposed to consistently abandoning myself in the name of alcohol, my relationship with alcohol, or in the name of, my relationship with this person, or consistently abandoning myself in the name of, acquiring love from someone else. It was like, well, what if I just like, it's just like me. It's just like me against the world, you know? Um, like what would I do with just me? Um, and you figure it out. I mean, like I've said this before, my first year that I had quit drinking, there's like so much spare time, so much spare. Like, what do people do with all this time? And, I at the time was attending AA meetings and I took up the drums, just like taught myself like on like through YouTube and like just listening like earbuds and like just figuring it out. Like you figure it out, and it's also a really great way to kind of start unleashing like what you really like and like want to be doing. And I mean, if you turn out to be a big weirdo, like don't be surprised because there's a lot of masks that we wear, um where, we've convinced ourselves it's not safe to be like 100%, unabashedly ourselves. And that is the way that we control that, right? Like controlling our image. And so when you kind of like relinquish control on that and you start sort of like exploring um who you are and like genuinely what you're into, um and how you like to pass your time, and then realizing that like, oh, like I've been hiding this, or I'm actually not okay with this, or oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Like I don't want to share it with other people, and start sort of like uh, scratching below the surface of those inhibitions. Like that's the real control, is like you spending time with yourself as opposed to you putting yourself in these relationships, whether it be with alcohol or with people that you don't have any control over anyway. You might get glimpses of the illusion of control, but it's not real. So, for so many of us to continue with the narrative of, I should be able to control this, is so ridiculous now because you you never had any control over it anyway. It's not something that can be controlled. A liquid's uh, physiological effect on your body is not something that you can control. Willpower does not outweigh biology. Um, Controlling the amount of love or attention or validation or desire that someone else has for you is completely out of your control. So any specks of control that you think you might have had is it's an illusion. So the sentence of I should be able to control this doesn't actually make any sense. Got it? Okay? So it's not the drinking, it's the story, it's the narrative, it's the illusion. These kinds of things are so important to think about because and this is like the majority of the work that I do with my clients is we rarely talk about like how to drink less. Like it's, sometimes if they have an event or if there's like a dinner or something that they're going to, we'll map out a plan for them. But the majority of the time, the way that I built the program and the discussions that we have in our coaching calls is we map we map the whole system. So emotional, physical, relational. We regulate their nervous systems so the body isn't like fight or flight all the time, right? That like tension. We build new rituals that feel good for each individual person in there. Um, we shift the narrative really quickly from I can't have that to I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. That's control. That's power, right? So the more that you believe in that like self-control myth when it comes to things that are completely out of your control, for example, the physiological effect of uh, alcohol on your body, or another person's perception of you or the way that they treat you, the more that you believe that self-control myth, the more you are delaying making any actual positive changes in your life, positive changes as you see fit, whatever you want. um because you're too busy trying to be better or do better, instead of getting curious about what's really going on and with inside of you and what's been going on with you. um so I hope that makes sense. Like the truth is, like, you don't need more control. You need a sort of map of who you are, what your thoughts and beliefs are about yourself, how they manifest into behaviors, and how you show up in your own environment. And we need to look at that map and figure out what is actually like working for you and what isn't. Um, it has to include your messy dating history, your heartbreaks, your perfectionism, your survival strategies, your relationship with your family, past and present, your any sort of like coping skills, like it just all of it. And like I do that with we get to know each other so well. We get to know each other so well. It is so beautiful. But I do that with each and every single one of my clients. Um, because until you bring the whole picture into the room, you'll keep mistaking self control for something it's not. You'll keep mistaking the illusion of control over things that cannot be controlled, when really what you really need is more self trust. So, next time you hear that voice whisper, you should have more self control. You should know better. You get to answer back, I don't need more control. I need a new map. I need a map, first of all, and then I probably need a new map, and one that includes all of me. The woman who is keeping it all together, the impact that that has on me, the impact that the relationships in my life have on me, the woman who's given too much, or given so much, and frankly, the woman who's tired of pretending that I am fine. Because, girl, I know you're not fine because you're here listening to this podcast, and nobody listens to this podcast unless something's going on. So, if you are not plugging my program, but I will be plugging my program because man, it's one of a kind. I'm not the best at what I do. I'm like literally the only one that does what I do. If you are a woman in midlife who is super high functioning and you are ready to shape the second half of your life much differently than the first, the link to start with my masterclass, the link is in the show notes. Start with my masterclass. At the end of the masterclass is it's like 40-45 minutes. At the very end, a button will pop up, and you can book an appointment with me if you want to talk about joining us in the women's program. It'll be the best decision of your life. I've had women in there for so long because the community, and I'm always coming up with something new, and the programming is incredible. If I do say so myself, and so do all my clients. So that is there for you. But um, if you have any comments, leave them in the comments, shoot me an email, anything you want. But I hope that this episode made sense. It's not the drinking. It is the story that you're telling yourself about the drinking, sort of. Control is an illusion outside of yourself. I love you so much. Thanks for watching, listening to another episode of Recovering from Everything, a podcast for everyone who has ever had anything happen to them, ever. I love you, and I will see you so soon.